The Wizard of the Kremlin is not the kind of book I normally read, and not just because it has a guy walking away in silhouette on the cover, but 2 separate subscribers recommended this book, and so I thought I'd give it a go. It surprised me. The Wizard of the Kremlin by Giuliano da Empoli. It's a political thriller. The story is simply framed. A Parisian academic on a research trip to Moscow gets in a breezy online exchange about Soviet literature with someone he assumes is a student. Moments later, he is whisked out of Moscow by 2 bodyguards in an armored limousine and driven to a palatial estate in the woods, summoned by none other than Vladimir Putin's ex-Machiavel, Vadim Baranov. Baranov has been living in obscure retirement for over a decade, but is desperate to tell just one person how he took an unknown KGB agent and turned him into the most powerful and dangerous man in the world. It's a compelling and intriguing start, but can Da Empoli's fictionalized characters hold a candle to their terrifying real-world equivalents? 1. This book is astonishingly quotable. And that would be an achievement if Da Empoli's mother tongue were English. But when you consider this is a book written about Russians talking in Russian, written by an Italian in French, that has been translated into English, well, that's pretty extraordinary. It has an astonishingly strong and precise start. It's tense, it's immediate, it's clever, and it never feels the need to impress you. His talent for aphorism is so great, he will put the perfect maxim in the middle of a paragraph and then keep on going and do something else at the end. It's astonishing to see someone with that much capacity for insight, that they don't use every decent turn of phrase as a clever way to end a chapter. I got pissed off with myself with my notes because I kept on just writing down bits of the novel in quotes and then putting brilliant at the end. That was really good. And the translation by Willard Wood uses Orwell's dictum of never using a long word when a short one will do. He keeps things precise and clear and unfancy. One cat writes beautifully. The other cat translates perfectly. Prigozhin-level chef kisses all round. 2. This book is magisterially authoritative. One of the reasons I've never been a huge fan of political thrillers, by which I mean thrillers with lots of politicians in them, is to me they feel like they have this thick layer of inauthenticity running through them. One of 2 ways generally. One is they're written by lying bag politicians, literally rewriting history and sometimes proving that they're so narcissistic they don't understand. Fan fiction isn't something you should write about yourself. And the second is that they're written by people who just don't know enough or don't have enough access to bring those people and those places into any more focus than they are already. In those books, the Kremlin and Downing Street and Washington, D.C. all feel like green screen backgrounds, and the counterpart to any real-life figure feels like a waxwork or a body double. That is not the case here one bit. This cat was a political advisor to the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, and you don't question a thing that he describes within Vadim Baranov's story. You know, whether you're in the G8 or in a hotel bar in Lisbon or you're in the heart of the Kremlin, everything feels very authentic because all of the people around you are well drawn and their motivations are chillingly clear. That makes the politics in this book fascinating, not least because it is not a question of who's up and who's down, who's in and who's out. It's about who's alive, who's in prison, who's on the run, and who may be about to die. And at the heart of that are incredibly adept portraits of people who you know exist in real life and who affect the world every day with their decisions. And that takes us to 3. This book is like culture shock. It takes you to a Russia that you've never known before. It takes Putin out the headlines and it plants him in your head. Vadim Baranov, although a fictional composite, is completely real as a character in this book. And Putin is somebody who, at least for me, I understand in a new way. I understood Russia in a way that I'd never done before. Something else that makes it feel very different is 4. This book is almost entirely narrated as a conversation over dinner. And it really has the ebb and flow of a long dinner date with the most fascinating conversationalist you'd ever meet, who kind of overwhelms you with their power and their experience and their insight. It reminded me of some passages in Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, where he's talking about Lord Henry Wotton, and he says, like he just dominates any conversation that he's in, particularly at dinner or whatever. With him, ideas take flight and everyone is just held captive. And something that I'd never seen before is these M dashes to denote a new speaker instead of quotation marks. Quite frequently, there's long passages with just an M dash and another M dash. And because I'm ignorant and I didn't realize that's what a lot of French literature does, I thought this was the most brilliant new avant-garde way of showing how Vadim Baranov, as he talks, is powering his way into the narrator's mind, into the narration itself, until you don't really know when it's the narrator speaking and when it's Baranov. Even though that's obviously not the intention, that's how it felt to me. It was so well done. That sense of slowly having your thoughts invaded and twisted and changed by somebody else. But that leads us to 5. Because it is a conversation that takes place over one night, the tension slowly wears out as we go through the book. Like a real story told to you all the way until dawn, the latter chapters felt to me a little bit soporific. This is a two-hander in which one guy describes all the things that has happened in his life. And he's not going to die in his own story. And I'm very, very grateful that Empoli didn't introduce some kind of super lame action thriller element toward the end of the story. You can imagine that happening to try and inject some kind of futile, unnecessary third act drama. That would be the Netflix version of this story, Just as Baranov finishes, a Spetsnaz team drops in, and then, they have to make a run for it. Oh, it would suck. He has too much tact and taste to do that. But nevertheless, the problem remains that I think were Vladimir Putin a character in a book, this would be a far tenser read. The kind of hubris that Vladimir Putin shows in real life, I don't think would ever go unpunished in a story where he's simply a fictional character. But, the tension in this story comes from the fact that he's a person in real life who is out there and we don't know what he's going to do next. It is a phenomenally vivid and close atmosphere for a thriller that doesn't deliver a huge climax, but is no less memorable for the way that it ends. It's clever, it's startling, it has the potential to shift your perceptions on something that is happening right now. The Wizard of the Kremlin is a pure paperback pleasure. I can't imagine you not having a good time reading this. I started this channel in part because I was trying to read more what they call comps. That's when you write your own book and you're pitching it to publishers and to agents. You have to tell them what other books are like yours. I don't want to sound like too much of a dick here, but a lot of the time you read a book that you think is a comp to yours and you feel pretty good about yourself. You think, I've got this. Other times you read a book like this from a debut author in translation, and you just think, I'm this is brilliant. How could I ever compete with this? Now, It could be that Giuliano da Empoli can't write about anything as well as Putin and the Kremlin. But what an amazing book. Whatever comes along next with his name on it, I am going to read in hardback. I thought this was a phenomenal book. It's not just a blinding read, it's also a great example of how fiction can open up different channels to understanding. I've read biographies of Putin. This taught me so much more about his background and his mindset. So, alternates to The Wizard of the Kremlin. This is the first time I have really struggled. Like I said, I don't read a lot of thrillers written about politicians. To me, the lifeblood of fiction is surprise, and I almost never feel surprised in a political thriller. So this is an area I could definitely improve in. If you have suggestions, please leave them in the comments. My first recommend is Robert Harris's The Ghost. The story is framed around a number of encounters that a ghostwriter has with a former prime minister. In this case, it's an analogue of Tony Blair cooling his heels after the Iraq War. It's a cracking thriller, and the hypothesis that Harris places at the end of that book is brilliant and really difficult to argue against, even though it's probably not true. It's also the most mean-spirited thing that Harris has ever written. Blair and Harris had apparently once been friends, and there is a tangible sense of score settling throughout. Our next book is very different. It is called The Devil's Own Work by Alan Judd. It's a super spooky novella, a kind of Faust story. And it was inspired by what must have been a eerie dinner that the novelist had with Graham Greene. Why would that book about a cursed manuscript be comparable to The Wizard of the Kremlin? Well, it's a story narrated in part by a damned man in a haunted house that he can never leave because a terrifying and omniscient power will never let him go. Despite being very different, the tone just reminded me of The Wizard of the Kremlin. Finally, we have another book that has a couple of weird parallels. This is because of the author's shared proficiency in languages, because it's a dark story told by a narrator over the course of a single night, and because of the disorientating sense of culture shock the book has when its narrator meets a leader who thinks he's become a god and goes utterly insane. And that's, of course, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. These books share a bleak wit and a horror at looking at the abyss of human power gone unchecked, the impulses that lead to terrible crimes against humanity. It's not just a foundational book, it's a really good read. You've probably heard a lot about it, but this is one of the books that you really should read and decide what you think about it for yourself. That's it. Links to these books can be found in the descriptions below. If you click on those links, it helps me out. If you want to help the world out, go to your local independent bookstore and buy a copy there. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. If you really liked it, there's a Substack for free with loads of extra info and thoughts that I had that didn't make it into the vid. It comes out every Monday too. Thank you again, and I'll see you next Monday.